It is July. And in July, it is Giallo July, which is a readathon put on by Alex from the Bookubus and Bert from Past Story Time and a bunch of other people, and it's all about reading Giallo-style Italian mystery thriller stories. So it can be mysteries, it can be thrillers, it can be those kind of exploitation sort of things, but they fall more on the side of like vintage mysteries and thrillers like from the 70s. The Giallo style movies and books were all the rage for a while in Italy at the time. So I want to participate in that. It was also just Summerween, and I had wanted to participate in Summerween as well. I was in Ohio for the majority of the time that it was taking place, and then I was on my own at home for other points where it was taking place, and I just didn't want to read scary books when I was in places alone, either that I was familiar with or that I wasn't. It's hot, can you tell? These are good. I got them at Trader Joe's. They're like tangerine creamsicles, and I really like them, but they're not something I like gravitate towards eating, so I've had them for a while. So I thought it would be fun to try and do all the Giallo prompts and all the Summerween prompts in this video. I know technically I missed Summerween, but that's fine. To enjoy reading some spooky books, some horror books, some mystery books, some thriller books, some vintage books, some current books. I wanted to start that now. I did try to participate in Winterween this year, and I read some things for it. I read part of, I don't even have it, where is it? I don't know where it went. I started reading a Shirley Jackson collection, but I will insert that footage later just to let you know how far I got in it. The Shirley Jackson book is one of the things that I think I might want to read this week. So we'll talk about other things that I'm going to read as this video progresses, as this week goes on. But I wanted to say that I've already started a book and it already fulfills quite a few prompts. Let's talk about the prompts first, actually. So the prompts for Giallo July are yellow on the cover, animal on the cover in the title, color in the title, and violent words, so like death, murder, knife, anything like that. And then the prompts that are book prompts for Summerween: thriller or horror, night sky on the cover, 5 words in the title, take place in the summer. So that's like about the actual book. And then the 5th prompt is always to read a book in the dark. So I've already started my reading for Giallo July and for Summerween, and I started reading Mary Robert Rinehart, The Yellow Room. I think this is the 5th Mary Robert Rinehart book I've read. Maybe it's the 4th. The cover came off, so we'll just use this cover. And this one follows Carol Spencer, who is going up to her main house. It is wartime and her brother is at the war, but he's coming home to be congratulated in Washington to marry his sweetheart. And his mother thinks that Carol, the youngest of the family, should go up to Maine, open the Maine house, because her brother Greg will really want to hang out in Maine because he's used to like all the hot weather in Europe or something like that. I'm not sure. This book does take place starting in June, so it is a summer book. It does take place in the summer, so we have ticked one of the prompts off for Summerween already. Of course, as soon as Carol gets to their house, some weird things start happening. Some people who are supposed to be there are not there. It's wartime, so people are spread very thin. Carol knows this. She finds out that the woman that they hire every summer to open and run the house has fallen down the stairs in the house and has a broken leg. Their gardener has had an appendicitis. There's mysterious goings on all around. And then Carol stumbles on a dead body in the linen closet. I don't love the ice cream, but I do love like the tangerine icy outside. I love Mary Robert Rinehart. I love Golden Age mysteries. This one's really interesting. It has a lot to do with the war. It has a lot to do with the family dynamic, which I feel like is a common theme in Mary Robert Rinehart. I am quite a bit of the way through this. That's why I wanted to do this intro. So I am like only an 1/8 away from the ending, and I want to finish this one up hopefully tonight. This one also counts for the Giallo July prompt of yellow on the cover and also of color in the title. which is also yellow. And then today I did start reading my second book for this vlog, which is Spite House by Johnny Compton. I'm reading this one on audio, and this one definitely fits for thriller or horror. I think this is considered a horror, but I've heard that it's like not that horrific. This is the first time I've eaten one of these and like let it melt a little and not just like bitten into it. I'm a biter, not with my front teeth. I'm not crazy, but I do like to bite things with my side teeth. Like a cow, you know, not scary. But it's way better when you melt it because then all the flavors kind of mesh together. This definitely counts for thriller or horror book for Summerween. It also counts for a book with the night sky on the cover, definitely. And it counts for violent word from the Giallo prompts. So I would definitely consider Spite to be a violent word. I got this book, this is an ARC. I think I found this in a little free library a few years ago. I was super happy to find it. It had just come out at the time. And I thought this was interesting. I like a haunted house story. I think I had just read The Haunting of Hill House, and so I was in a haunted house kind of mood. But then I was like, ugh, do I really want to read this? I don't know. It got bad reviews. Then recently, I didn't realize that this is a Black author, so that makes all the difference. I would much rather read Black horror, genre fiction by Black authors to see kind of the stories there than just like a white male horror author. We have a lot of white male horror authors right now. We don't really necessarily need to be reading them as much as we are. So I was super excited to find that this is a Black author, and that made me really much more excited to read it again. Also, it's like very slim. I'm reading this one on audio, and so far I am enjoying the audio. I only got about 15% of the way through. We meet Eric, who is a dad on his own with his two daughters. One of them recently turned 18, the other is quite young, and they are traveling across the country going to Odessa, Texas to reclaim the family house. We find out right away that something's going on, that they're running away from something, that there's lots of rules, that there's lots of contingency plans. We find out right away that they are, you know, trying to be extremely careful and make sure that they don't get stopped by the police. We see right away that they're trying not to stand out in crowds, that they are running from something that has happened back on the East Coast. We hear from Eric's perspective, we hear from his older daughter's perspective, and then we start to get perspectives of other people as well. And Eric and his daughters are holding up in this small town. They're looking for work. It's really hard for Eric to find work, and it's important for him to find work that is like valid and true and not like doing bad things or illegal things, partly because they are on the run and partly just because of his morals. His daughter has less qualms about this. She's been running drugs when she can, and doing small bad like jobs that are dangerous, not too dangerous to her, but like dangerous to their kind of environment, but thinking like, oh well, drug dealers aren't gonna rat on them because they don't want, you know, trouble either. Eric sees an ad in the paper to stay at house. It's a crazy amount of money to just stay in this house and report on any paranormal activity that happens there. And Eric thinks, well, this is a good way to either get shelter and housing for his children for a little while if this is a fake ad or if they're going to stiff him for the money or whatever. But if the money is real, this is like an amazing opportunity, and all he has to do is stay in this house and, you know, report if there's bumps in the night or anything like that. Obviously, he and his daughter don't really believe in that kind of thing and don't really think that those kind of things are true or that they're going to have any problems there. But when they see the house, they get very trepidatious about the whole endeavor. And then in the meantime, we do see some from his younger daughter, and his younger daughter obviously does have some paranormal leanings, or at least maybe she does. She thinks she does. Right away in the first chapter that we see her in, she sees ghosts. So when we're hearing from her perspective, we are experiencing that as well. She's very, very young. Is she actually seeing ghosts? Is she actually seeing what she's seeing? It's hard to tell. We don't know the past of the different people, so it's interesting so far. It seems a little like basic maybe, and that's the only thing that I can think that people didn't like about it since I've only read a very short amount. But when I read some more of this, or more likely when I finish The Yellow Room, I will come back to you and talk more about these books. Let's see what prompts we have completed so far once we finish these two books. we did yellow cover, we did color in the title, violent word, we did a thriller or horror, and we did the night sky as well as takes place in the summer. So really the only two prompts that we have to finish in this vlog is 5 words in the title and animal on the cover or in the title. So maybe I can come up with one book that would fit those 2 prompts. Let me know if you participated in Summerween during Summerween. Let me know what books you read for it. Let me know if you're taking part in Giallo July or did take part in Giallo July, because chances are this will come out after July is over. Okay, so I have finished 2 books for this vlog. I finished The Yellow Room by Mary Roberts Rinehart. This follows a young woman who goes to open her summer house, her family's summer house. She kind of has to make plans for herself. Her car isn't prepared. This is during the war, so they've taken all the telephones away, you know. It's getting more and more remote, and the servants that she's brought from their New York home to Maine are not willing to stay, don't want to stay, and when a dead body is discovered in an upstairs closet, a linen closet, and when they discover that the yellow room has been slept in, the maids and servants are definitely wanting to flee, and our young main character has to start to figure out what happened in her house while it was closed up over the winter. Luckily, there is a young soldier, a captain there recovering from an injury. He's pining to get back to the war, but he is like a special forces kind of soldier, so he takes up the mantle of trying to figure out what's going on and what happened in the Yellow Room. So I love Mary Robert Rinehart. I think this one was a fun one. Not my favorite of hers, not the best one that I've read by her. It was definitely a little long, and it was definitely a little meandering, but it had like a cute little potential romance, and it had some interesting ideas, and I think just that it was written during World War II and that it talks a lot about World War II and how that affected everyone, but specifically a lot of people in rural places. So the town where they are in Maine is a very small, very safe seeming town, but because of the war, when something does go wrong, they're hard pressed to get people to help. The local sheriffs are struggling, and the people in the town are going without so much already that this threat to their safety is like extremely unnerving. So I did really enjoy this one. It definitely works for a yellow book and color in the title, and also takes place in the summer because this starts in June and goes throughout, like, I think till August. And it's funny because I think a lot of Mary Robert Rinehart's books take place in the summer, because The Red Lamp took place in the summer as well, and a lot of them have to do with leaving the city or leaving your comfortable city life to go into rural life, and how different that is, how, you know, strange that can be as a city person, and how like country ways are much different than city ways. So I think that's kind of a theme in Mary Robert Rinehart's writing. So love this one as always. I love her work. Not my favorite of all of hers. Maybe when I've read some more, I'll do like a tier ranking video of her books that I've read. But I think she is a super underrated queen of crime, a golden age mystery writer from America, and she definitely talks about a lot of places that I have been. So I really like that aspect of her writing as well. The next book that I finished for this vlog is The Spite House by Johnny Compton. This is a pretty traditional haunted house book, and it sees our main character Eric and his two daughters traveling across the country for reasons that are unclear to the reader at first. We know that the family is kind of running away from things, but we don't know what. Because they're running away from things, Eric is not able to get like a real stable job. He's not able to get a stable job. When they see an ad in the paper to stay at the Spite House and make a boatload of money just from observing any paranormal activity that they see there, they think that this is a good opportunity to make some money, stay in one place, but keep their identities secret. And of course, once Eric and Des start staying there, weird things start to happen. The family realizes that there is more to this hokey, supernatural idea than they were thinking. They assumed that this was just going to be routine and that of course the house wasn't haunted, but the more they stay there and the more they learn about it, the more they're starting to believe all the rumors and stories. So I liked this one. I thought it was interesting. I think it was a little like not fleshed out maybe, or a little bit scattered and not super clear in its messaging or in its ideas. But there were a lot of really interesting aspects of this, like the Spite House itself and the idea of houses built for spite or things built for spite, which like lots of things are, especially in the US, I feel that like is an interesting idea, and how the kind of negativity of that and the reasoning behind it, like where that might have come from or how that might affect people who live in the house. If you're staying in a house that was built for spite, like what are the feelings, what are the vibes, what are the spirits, you know, doing to you as you stay there is an interesting idea. The architecture of the house itself was interesting, but I don't think it was extremely well described or explained. The family dynamic was interesting, and I liked that you really didn't know what was going on with the family until like a casual line is dropped. I enjoyed that. Like, instead of making it this big secret thing that all of a sudden is like a huge reveal, it was like we knew the family was running away from stuff. It was building up to find out why, but when you found out why, it was just like a throwaway line that you were like, wait, what? Later the reveal comes, but not as like a cliffhanger or a surprise or a twist. It was more just a very casual then acknowledgement of what was going on with the family. I liked the idea of seeing other people who lived in the Spite House's story. I don't know, it just didn't have a lot of depth to it. It was a little bit scratch the surface, there's more surface, which is not necessarily bad, but also doesn't necessarily make for like a super interesting or nuanced read. I did end up liking this one, and this one fits the night sky on the cover and also the hateful word or evil word, bad word in the title. And then I decided to pick my last two books for this vlog. I started out picking one book because I was like, oh, this is perfect. My last two prompts are 5 words in the title and animal on the cover. So 19 claws and a blackbird, 5 words in the title, right? Except it is not blackbird, 1 word, like the bird, like the black bird. It is a black bird. So it is 2 words. So it is 6 words in the title. So I decided I would read this one anyway, and I would consider it animal on the cover. I love the cover of this. I got this one while I was in Ohio recently. Like I said, this is 19 Claws and a Blackbird by Agustina Bastarrica, and this was translated by Sarah Moses. Bastarrica is a Argentinian author. This is translated from the Spanish, and this is a collection of short stories. 20 short stories altogether, 19 and a blackbird. I've read, let's see, up to page 76, so just about halfway through. I don't know if I've read half of the stories, though. Let me see if there's a list. I've read 9 of the stories. Almost halfway through the stories, almost halfway through the book, and I'm not loving this one so far. I haven't read Tender is the Flesh, but I actually got it at the same time as this. And since people really loved that one and didn't really like this one, I decided to read this one first in case I did like it, or in case it wasn't good, or I don't know why exactly, but just so that I could read the short stories first. I don't know, I like the first short story quite a bit. It's told in second person, and it's about a young woman who is in her apartment. She's about to step out onto her balcony when she hears a whooshing and a noise, and one of her upstairs neighbors jumped off of his higher balcony and landed dead on her balcony. So I thought that was like an interesting story and interesting to be told in second person, and I enjoyed that in general. The other story I liked was Anita and Happiness, and that was about a man who's convinced that his girlfriend is an alien. I thought that one was interesting too. Even those two, but especially the other stories besides those two, just haven't, again, felt fully fleshed out. This kind of feels like a book where Tender is the Flesh did really well, and then they were like, give me whatever you have so that we can put another one of your books out. Tender is the Flesh, I think, came out in 2020, and this came out in 2022, at least the translated versions. And it just feels like the publisher was like, give me whatever you got. The stories don't feel very full or contained or well thought out or well planned. I'm not positive that that's the case. I don't know for sure. That's how it feels to me. I will be interested to read the rest of these stories, and I will be interested to read something else by Agustina Bastarrica to see if maybe this is just her writing style. Maybe this is just how she writes or what she wants to write. I think also a lot of authors put out collections of very short stories because they have all these ideas. They have all this work in their minds that need to get out some way, so they create short stories as just a way to purge their mind of those other things so that they can then go on to write whatever they intend to write next. I will continue to work on this one, and then the other book that I decided to read for 5 words in the title is The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. I had started this during Winterween, and now I'm just a little bit more than halfway through. Some of these stories are really long. The one that I'm stuck on right now, Elizabeth, is like 40 pages, so I haven't read that one. I've been reading ahead to read some of the other short stories, but I will talk about this more in another clip once I have either finished one or the other of these books, or when I have a little bit more time to discuss this in depth. It is January 5th, and today is the beginning of Winterween, so welcome to my Winterween reading vlog. I had totally forgotten about Winterween. I think Gabby from Gabby Reads, and maybe Olivia, I don't even know if Olivia made a announcement video. Gabby made an announcement video like way back in November, and I remember being excited about it, but I also totally forgot about it. Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte and Gabby from Gabby Reads have created the Ween readathons, Summerween and Winterween, and sometimes they do other weens. These readathons focus on spooky books, on horror, on thrillers, on mysteries, books that you would normally maybe read during spooky season, but it is to celebrate these books in seasons that are not spooky, so in wintertime or in summertime. One of the things that I definitely wanted to read for Winterween, or at least get started in, was The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. So in 2022, I read 2 Shirley Jackson works. I read The Haunting of Hill House, and I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and I really loved both of those, but especially We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I'm sure that I've read The Lottery, the titular story in this collection, in high school. I vaguely remember it. I remember like the basic premise, I guess. But I'm excited to read other stories by her just because I've only ever read those 3 things, and now that I have a greater appreciation for her, I would love to read more of her work in general. I was super excited to find this at the Goodwill. The way I read short stories, I know I'm not going to get to all 26 in a week. Time to check in on Winterween. I've read, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 short stories. That's not too bad. That's like a 1/4 of that book. Let's talk about The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. So I started reading this as you've seen earlier this year in January, February, and I've read some more for Summerween and Giallo July. And for this video, I really like these stories because they are very unsettling, very normal, but the unsettlingness is in their normalcy. The mundanity of a lot of this story and the everyday horrors that we face in these stories is really compelling and interesting. You know, just a scene at a party where someone says a weird thing, just dealing with your neighbors when they are being creepy and weird, but not creepy and weird in like a horror way or a outlandish way or a weird way. The horror of day-to-day life, the horror of mundanity is really what Shirley Jackson is best at. And I think on the flip side of that, she's really great at the idea of normalcy and horror in normalcy the opposite way, where people take things as very normal, where she makes things seem very normal that are not normal, like two girls living alone in a castle when they've murdered their whole family, or like people going on a ghost hunt, you know. So I think the whole thing with her is that she creates this very real, very rich atmosphere in all of her work that I've read so far that plays with those two angles. The idea that the normal is crazy and that the crazy is normal, or that the horror is normal and the normal is horrific. So I think that's what is so timeless about her work. A lot of her work is a little dated just because of when it was written. It's dated. So, you know, obviously no cell phones, no computers, not much TV, but it just feels so real and gripping, and then again in that horrific way, totally unsettling and off-putting. So I read quite a few stories out of here. There's a million stories in this book. There's 26 stories, an introduction and an epilogue, and that's a lot of stories, especially because they range from 2 to 3 pages to 40 to 50 pages. At least 15 of the stories, so almost half, more than half. How many did I say there were? 26? More than half of the stories in this. My problem with reading short fiction like this and short story collections like this is if I read them back to back, if I read them all at once, I will never remember the stories at all. They will have no impact on me because they will all blur together and I won't remember them. Like, as it stands, I remember a few of these very much stand out and, you know, the creepiness in them stood out. But if I had read them all at once, they wouldn't stand out to me at all. So I've been reading them in between reading other things. 19 Clouds and a Blackbird, those are also short stories. So I've been reading like one of these, one of that, and then whatever book I happen to be reading at the time. And I just can't do it anymore. Like, I love this book. I'm really enjoying all the stories in it. Well, not all the stories, but I'm really enjoying reading it. And I want to finish it and I want to continue it. But for the sake of this video, for the sake of the month, like, I can't keep reading it. It's just blurring together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop reading this now that I've read more than half of the stories. And I'll come back to it again, hopefully by the end of the year. But if not, maybe for another ween incarnation, winter ween if it comes around again, or a fall ween around Halloween. So maybe I will come back to it then, but I'm going to stop reading these stories and put it aside. Some of my favorite stories so far have been, in case you want to get this copy and find out, My Life with R.H. Macy. I really love that. The Demon Lover I really like. Flower Garden was a lot about like racism, and a lot of Shirley Jackson's stories deal with racism and kind of the absurdity of racism and how it really hurts both the people who are being prejudiced against and the people who are doing the prejudice. Those are the standout ones that I can remember, like their names, but there are a lot of other stories in here that I did enjoy also, and if I looked at the actual stories, I could probably tell you more. So if you want a deeper dive into this book, definitely let me know. Maybe I could do it as like a little aside or short or something. Also let me know if you've read Shirley Jackson, what your favorite Shirley Jackson is, and if you've read her short stories, if you have a favorite short story. So I haven't finished this one, but I am stopping here and I am counting it as a book with 5 words in the title, so The Lottery and Other Stories. is August, and it is definitely the end of Summerween and Giallo July. So I did finish 19 Claws and a Blackbird by Agustina Bastarrica. This has 20 stories in it, some shorter, some longer, but none very long, like none over, I think, like 8 pages or something like that. I did mark a couple of the stories that I liked. I tabbed them at the bottom. The first story I liked the best, and then there was a couple others that I thought were, you know, interesting, but overall I wasn't really a fan of this one. I think it's a pretty sharp contrast between The Lottery and Other Stories and this book, because The Lottery and Other Stories, each story had so much depth to it, each story was so creepy, each story had so much going on, that coming to this one after that, or at the same time, because I was reading them at the same time sometimes, this one just fell so flat. All the stories were so one-dimensional. All the characters were not interesting enough for you to get to know. You know, you didn't connect with the majority of the people in this, the stories in this, the ideas in this. There were a lot just for shock factor. Something that Shirley Jackson does amazingly well is have a creeping dread, have an overall sense of uncertainty and unease, whereas these were like not that at all. They were like a regular story and then someone gets molested, or a regular story and then someone dies. There just wasn't much depth to this at all. And again, could that be cultural? Yes. Could it be something lost in translation? Yes. But I have a feeling that these just weren't fully formed, weren't whole works, and just weren't that interesting to me. So I'm disappointed. I do love this cover, and I was super excited to read these stories, and I did get Tender as the Flesh, Agustina Bastarrica's other translated work, at the same time as this, but I'm definitely not going to read it right away because I need a little bit of distance, a little bit of space between that and this, and between this and other things. I'm happy to have read it. I'm always happy to have read more translated work. It coincides that I finished this in August, so it worked out for Women in Translation Month, which is awesome. You can never read too much translated work, can never read too many women in translation, so that is very cool. And it does give me a good idea of what to expect from Bastarrica's work in the future or in other books that I read of hers. So this was for Animal on the cover. So I did complete all the prompts. I did complete all the reading prompts for both Giallo July and for Summerween. I didn't do some of the like physical challenges or other things like reading a book in the dark and things like that from the list. But it was fun to use these prompts and to pick out some horror and thriller books, mystery books, and it was fun to combine these two readathons for this video. Let me know if you participated in Summerween or Giallo July. Let me know if you read any of the books that I read in this vlog and what you thought of them. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!